everyone, welcome to Business for Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're watching this on YouTube. My name is Max Peterson. I'm the CEO of Smith & Sons Canada. And look, today I just want to have a quick chat. Obviously, all the time, we certainly thank you for your ear and for spending time and maybe keeping in touch with Business for Builders. We'd really hope that the information that you are getting from this podcast is really sort of helping you and assisting you in building a high-performance building company. So in line with that, today I'm going to chat with, you've heard the Red Bull saying, Red Bull gives you wings. Well, today I want to sort of talk about how leverage gives you lifestyle. And so, I think it's super important that as builders and general contractors, and for the most part, they're the folks that I'm chatting with, today on this show, as well as in my day job as a franchisor with Smith & Sons. I'm dealing with 6 franchise general contractors in British Columbia and Alberta, and chatting with a few newbies, one out of Ontario, which is exciting. I get to see, I guess, all ranges of activity and what it takes to really build or, really start a building company and then develop it into a multi-million-dollar operation. And, I thought about, the whole end goal, and we really talk about, in some of our marketing to builders and to general contractors, we talk about more leads, more profit, and better lifestyle. And it's not really just a wonderful catchphrase. It's actually something that we've thought about and basically what means a lot to builders. And so, I think with trying to achieve those end goals, like I've said in the past, a lot of builders just say to me, if I could get more leads, I would be set. And unfortunately, what they don't understand is that when you get more leads, then you've got to really amp up your ability to lead manage or to manage those inquiries. You've got to be able to then quote more efficiently. You've got to ensure that you've got your quoting mechanisms in place. You've got to make sure that you've got your ability, or you understand how to not only be a good salesperson, but also be a good closer. Because in a relationship, in a sales process, you will move tangibly from a sales position to a close position, and you've got to know when to close. And so, it is a challenge to understand, a lot of the diversity that it takes, I think, to build a building company. And we all know how to build houses is what we're trained to do. So what I want to do is I just want to touch on, a few points that I believe will create leverageability within your business. But unfortunately, most of what I'm going to cover today, if you did an apprenticeship as a carpenter like I did, pretty much everything I'm going to cover today is we've never been taught that. I've said it before, we get paid to build things plumb, straight and square, and we hope we get paid for delivering that service. When we take it to a next level and we want to develop a building company, the idea is that we want to make more money. But the challenge is like in the desire to make more money, there is a lot of extra pressure that comes on us, which if we move away from being deliberate to desperate, we will pay the ultimate price whereby we will have a business by default, not by design. And what I'm saying is that, there's a lot of times where you've got to hold your nerve and you've got to believe in the things that you can't see, like more leads coming in. Because if you are desperate and you go and try and ram raid a job and close a job out of desperation, odds on is your intuition is telling you not to do that. But because you're desperate for a sale, you go ahead and do that. And then you'll get mid-construction and go, why did I, push this deal over, into construction? And so, we're going to talk a whole bunch of stuff, and it's really nothing new under the sun. But really, when we're talking about leverage, you need to be able to develop or design that business from go to woe. And, I've got a breakdown. I think we've got to have items sorted under marketing. We've got to have things underway as far as the sales process. Your estimating and quoting procedures have got to be nailed down. You've got to have a good administrative or administration process within your business. And obviously, when you hit the building site, your construction methodologies need to be in place. I think the next thing that it probably is important, or is one of the most important, is your culture and your ability to recruit good talent. And then something else which I've just added to my list here is the accountability. I think we're too often, and I look at the Smith & Sons program, and I personally recruit all of our franchised operators, and then I personally train these guys and gals, and then I personally onboard, and then I personally work with them and through the what we call the 90-day onboarding phase as you begin to work under the Smith & Sons banner. And accountability it's massive, because it really does play an integral role in that early days development process, because a lot of what we demonstrate or deliver to our operators is new. It's very uncommon. And that is what makes the difference. Ultimately, what you get taught in the first 90 days after you've done your initial training is certainly an eye-opener. And a lot of the guys have testified to the fact that, there's things that they were just doing out of habit, that when I would sort of challenge them about that to make a change, it was hard, yes, but when they did and they executed off the back of our recommendations, they were rewarded for their trust and their faith and their execution. And so ultimately, all of those things combined, really what your goal is to systemize the business, because businesses operate off the back of systems. Humans run systems. So you need a good business and a good brand. You need a systemized approach to execution and delivery of the product. And then you need a good team. You need good people. So what really underpins all of that is your ability to maintain good culture, because that really does influence how the business operates day to day. So let's go back to the start. So marketing, I think episode 27, we had a guest on the show, Jeff Humphreys, did an awesome job. I would challenge you to have a listen to that podcast, listen to it a couple of times perhaps, and get in contact with Jeff. He will definitely help you get started as far as marketing your business and just chatting about your own brand in your city or your town. But again, keep in mind, everything that I'm going to go through now can seem very mechanical and sometimes not even of interest. I know a lot of guys, if you're like me, social media doesn't interest you that much, where you've got a passion to get involved and do a lot of the posting. So that might be something you might outsource. And the challenge with that is, if you outsource it to a company or a person that doesn't have an intimate understanding of the mandate of your company or the message of your company, it really is just going to be money you're going to flush down the can, and with very little or no ROI. So I would, and that's why I was so happy to have Jeff on board, because he's, I believe he's a cultural fit. I believe he understands the construction aspect because of, what his dad did for 30 odd years as a general contractor. And, he's really a today digital marketing expert. So that he would be someone that I could recommend, which is why we had him on the show. The next thing is keeping in mind we're trying to create leverage within our system. When I chat to one of our operators who is doing a really good job and he's seeing some really authentic and some genuine success, he tells me that his weeks are getting, the stress level is still there to a certain degree, because you are making sure that all the departments are doing their jobs. But as far as him running around operationally, he's now sitting above and watching all of the departments fly. So he's got a full-time interior decorator or designer. He's got an estimator / foreman carpenter who will come in off the job site and do a lot of his estimating. Then he's got a project manager, and he's got 2 carpenters that are, journeyman carpenters that work for him. And then, of course, he's got his subs, which he works really hard to ensure that he's got good subcontractors that deliver a high level of service and also quality of product. And then, obviously, the suppliers, which is a fairly, much a given. So he works terribly hard at making sure all of those verticals are functioning efficiently and in accordance with what he deems to be a necessary benchmark or an acceptable standard to ensure that he delivers ultimately the product to his clients at a high level. And so, I think for what he's putting together, it really is a bit of a template for what most guys want to achieve. And he's not there yet, not by a long shot, but he's certainly in a position where he can grow his business now exponentially. So you'll watch him go from around a $650,000 to $700,000 business to a $2 to $3 million business in the space of 12 months. So when you're 3xing your business like that, I think that's a fairly healthy number. I know everyone wants to maybe 10x their business, but I'm not sure that you quite understand. If you're going to do that in 12 months, do a 10x growth of your business, there's a lot of demands that are going to be placed on you as an individual. And so that is just a bit of a side note. You'd want to understand and be highly aware of your own capabilities and your own ability to really withstand some of the emotional upheaval that goes into developing and designing and growing a business. If you're the type of person that is anxious and that gets affected by the stress from clients, from subcontractors, from employees, from all the demands that are placed on you, and there's a shit ton of demand that is on you, then you need to think seriously about whether or not you actually want to develop a $3 million business. Maybe you'd be happy with just you and a couple of guys or gals and doing $1 million a year. And I'd say that, the side note is self-awareness. So everything we're doing is trying to create, we want to create lifestyle. That's why we got into business. We didn't get into business to just make it mediocre. We want to go big. And of course, sales is another place whereby you will leverage if you have the right systems in place. For me, sales is super easy. I mean, retail sales for me is an enjoyable process. I love every minute of it because I have a documented procedure and a lot of experience, I guess, in retail sales. I know that I am an authority, and so when I go and see a retail client, I just really have a gut level understanding that every client is different, but what underpins the process with every individual client is there is a standard operating procedure. With sales, we have a set markup or a very good indication as to what we mark up. And, if you get clients that you've got mid-construction and they're turning out to be real picky or they're turning out to be real pains in the ass, and you think back to yourself, well, I don't know what, I got this job, but I really cut my margins to win the job. I think what you shouldn't have done if you did cut your margins to get the job is I think you should have kept your margins and your markups in position, simply because that would have disqualified that client because they're price orientated. I would urge you to look for clients that are quality orientated, not clients that are all about price. When you've got clients that are maybe asking you for discounts or they're grinding you on price, I would probably say run the other way as fast as you can. Because I'm telling you, if they're like that in the negotiation phase, they're going to be like that in the construction phase. And so I think in the sales process, there's some things you need to understand, and really for me to document those or really spell those out in a quick podcast is almost impossible. But I think that the majors would be, I'm always wanting to deconstruct the wall of distrust by way of building rapport. And the way I build rapport is any excuse that I have to make contact with clients, up to about 8 to 10 touch points is what I need before I go to a close. Now, if I've made those touch points and they've got some validity, they're not frivolous, then I think if you're at 8 to 10 touch points, then you're in a stage where you can go to close. But you may not be. So this is why, it's funny, I have a lot of guys and gals, or a lot of folks that chat with me about, potentially buying a franchise in a business, and they will ask me all the time, Max, can you give me some data on the failure rates? Or, can you give me some guarantees? And the only thing that I can say to them is that with over 90 franchised operators, we've been going now for 12 years this year, with over 90 franchised operators in 3 countries, what I do know is that we have got a fairly consistent trajectory as far as success is concerned. The X factor is the operator. And I've only got 6 operators at the moment, and I've got a fairly large range between ages and skill sets and the DNA and their entrepreneurial flair, and their passion for building a business. Like, there is so many unknown quantities in us as individuals. It makes it terribly difficult to go, okay, if you execute off the back of this, you'll be fine. I think there's, in some cases, there's even resistance to things that we would recommend because there's an uncomfortability. I think specifically as it relates to the sales and close, a lot of, I see some guys that are really comfortable selling, building rapport with clients, but they can never bring themselves to go into the close mode because you have to, at some point, ask for the business. And I think that's sales 101, but I've known of guys that have had 20 quotes out there and they've got no updates. They don't know where they just figure, well, if they're out there, they're, at least there might be some jobs in it. You have to farm those leads and bring them to a close or figure out an advancement to make it, work closer to a close. So this is just sales. So if you've got a sales process and you understand how to qualify and you understand what your preferred client profile is, you've got those markers in your mind as to where you're going with every single client. So you have a standard operating procedure as it relates to your sales process, but every client's different. So you are going to have to flex in some cases. Sometimes people are really good up front and they say that they're not budget orientated, that they're quality orientated, but as you fish out, they start asking about quartz countertops and fancy tap sets, and you say, well, that's actually going to add 15 or 20,000 to the contract, and then you watch the blood rush from their head and the eyes roll back in their head, and that's a body language tell that says actually what they say doesn't map to their actual circumstance. And so this is why you've got to have your spidey senses on, because if questions are the answers. If you can ask the right questions and extract the answers, that answer can tell you something subliminally. Now, I think that there is a shit ton of science and psychology that goes into sales, and this is why I think if you can master the art of sales, it certainly will set you up, because obviously we can't build projects if we haven't got them to build. We have to sell them. So, questions like, if I go with a client and they sort of say to me, and sometimes you get clients that are honestly not knowledgeable about a project, and I will give them a lot more space than if I get someone who's super confident, because I'm now wary because they're kind of telling me how to quote the job. It's nice that they know what floor coverings they want, what countertops they want, et cetera, but at the end of the day, I might ask a question like, so is this your first renovation? And they say, no, we've done plenty before. And I'm like, oh, okay, so did you're involved in those renos? Oh yeah, I got my brother-in-law to do it. Immediately, I'm like, okay, so what's happening here is that I've been brought in as a price checker to make sure that this client's brother-in-law is not screwing them over. You see what I just did? That's why, I think if you are, as much as we'd love to trust humanity, I think you have to have your guard up a little bit. And without us insulting the client, it's just a red flag. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Maybe the brother-in-law is not interested in doing, maybe the brother-in-law is tired of working for this person. And so they're ready to sort of just, chime out. And now this person is looking for another general contractor. And so it's not all bad, but you've just got to have, it's an example as to the fact that you've got to have your spidey senses up, and you've got to be asking the right questions, and you've got to have a little bit of an awareness about what's going on around you rather than just getting tunnel vision and doing what the client wants us to do. And certainly, we talk about doing the quantity takeoff service, which is whereby we're giving them a bracketed price range. For the basement, you might say it's an $80,000 to $110,000 job. Is that within your expectation? And if they say, yeah, it's a little bit more than we thought, but we could probably stomach that, then we move them into a quantity takeoff, whereby we provide services that will nail down an exact number for that project. So it means we've got to run out and talk to all of our vendors, all of our suppliers, all of our subcontractors. We've got to give a selection sheet to the client for the things that we don't really know what they want, as far as, types of tap sets, countertops, floor coverings, wall colors, tile selections, anything else that we really are an aesthetic value. And then we can combine all of that. And that's why there's value in that for the client. If you don't do fixed price contract, this will probably not resonate with you, and you probably won't like what you're hearing. So look, we'll just quickly move through estimating and quoting. This is something that if you can have a system, I could probably sit down and do $100,000 basement. I can do a quote that would be within 5% by just sitting there and using my experience. Now, if you are brand new to the game, then you aren't going to have that historical data to fall back on. So you're estimating and quoting. Your leverageability in this instance is going to be very minimal. When I can sit down and do a $100,000 quote that is within 5%, that obviously gives me an advantage. But I'm 48 and I'm old and I've been around for a little while. And so you just got to be patient and do enough jobs like I've done to be able to sort of gather up the information to confidently execute and deliver a quote at that level. Now, there's all kinds of ways. The only training that I've ever had is I did a basics in estimating course, which was over a weekend. It wasn't super deep, but it was good enough for me to get some of the finer points as to how we go about estimating a project. So if you can do something online, obviously there's probably a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube directly or specifically to do with estimating and quoting. That's good. And I would urge you to just sort of take all that information with a pinch of salt and really find out what your groove is. I know with my 6 guys here in Smith & Sons, we do all have a core principle that we go by, but there is some variations depending on builder to builder and also client to client. Some clients are happy with our list of specifications and a number at the bottom. Other clients want to know categories and what the costs are associated. And depending on where we're at with the client, we may or may not offer up that much detail. It just depends on how badly we think the deal needs it for us to present that. So, look, I think that'll do for estimating and quoting. Administration, in administration, obviously we're talking about, payables, receivables, making sure your bookkeeping's up to date, ensure that your taxes are paid, and then side note, contract administration. This is something that we are doing for our operators as we speak. I'm not sure what my lawyer's going to charge me, but we are looking at finalising this week a fixed price building contract for all of Canada. And, we do that because I guess essentially if we don't have an agreement, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So we ensure that we've done a lot of the heavy lifting for our guys and all they have to do is execute off the back of the paperwork. The other thing that's involved in contract administration as the project goes, on its way is change order protocol. You've got to have something written into the contract that talks about change orders, and in the event that people want things changed, there is a standard practice, even to the point where somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Max, do you think you can, add that little pony wall?" And it might be a $500 maneuver. And if my cushions and contingencies are in place or that are, we may have a little bit of room in the budget for that, I might say to the client, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to authorize a change order. I'm going to show you the cost of what it would be. But, I think that I can probably squeeze that in for no charge." And we document that via a change order. Change orders are not just there for items where the customer pays money. And the reason we do that is because at the end of the day, we want the clients to know everything that we've done for them, that which they've paid for and that which they have got, basically as a freebie. And so, it's super important that the client has a full perspective on what they've received, whether it was paid for or whether it was not. So administration is a big part of the business. And then of course there's construction management, which for most of the GCs that we've got in the team, this is something that is more their forte. It's where they've spent a lot of their time is on construction sites, liaising with or hanging around other subcontractors, dealing with suppliers at some level. And so, the construction process is one that they are more confident in. However, when you're running not one, but 5 projects, this really comes back to you can't possibly manage in your head everything that's going on in those 5 projects. I know when I used to run framing crews, finishing crews, and exterior siding and soffit crews, that the superintendents that I was working for as the principal contractor had up to 20 to 25 houses on the go at once. And so he was, pretty much slammed all the time. And if the paperwork and the files that he actually had in his vehicle weren't as organized as they were, it was impossible for him to keep that in his head. So it goes back to paperwork, administration, but also taking advantage of any software that you might have. If you are doing quotes and estimates out of Excel spreadsheet, you are way behind. Now, quotes you can do on an Excel spreadsheet, I get that, but there is so much that comes after it. For the software that we use, everything interfaces. So you've got right from the initial point where you enter the client's information in, through to estimates, through to the final quote, through to converting it to a job, through to project management using a Gantt chart, through then invoicing and issuing, payment claims, as well as change orders. You've got to have all of that in one system, because systems will give you leverage, and leverage gives you lifestyle. So we're coming right back to why we're putting all of these things in place. Why is it that you would have one program to do estimating, another program to do invoices. You really want to find a program that all of that information is created and is held and issued all in the one piece of software. Because leverage gives you lifestyle. So, it's one thing to have all those mechanical bits and pieces in place. I guess we move on to culture, recruitment, and accountability. These are more intangibles. I think you've got to understand what a good culture is. And if you don't, hit me up on email, max@businessforbuilders.ca, and ask me some questions about culture, and I can share those with you. But ultimately, I guess there's a saying that says you would rather hire on attitude and then you can teach people the skills. Now, I'm not going to go and hire a handyman guy and I need a lead carpenter because he doesn't have the skill set that I need to handle that position. But I'm not going to hire a guy who's great on the tools, who's got some really good credentials, but his attitude is toxic. He will not get a job with me. I would rather hire someone with a few years less experience and mentor them and really, build them into the fabric of my building company and ensure that there's some ownership around that and also create some autonomy. And that really does, it does support good, positive cultural development. And so, that really segues straight into your ability to recruit good talent. We've talked about recruitment on this show before. A lot of guys will try and lowball hourly rates on advertisements for labor. I would encourage you to go the other way. Put a top end dollar amount, and you'll get the good guys that'll come to you and say, "Yep, I'm happy to work for that. Just tell me about the conditions or whatever." But ultimately, some of the guys that maybe are underskilled, you can actually then start them off on a lesser rate. So you get a lot more to pick from. And again, it's all about top of funnel. When we're doing marketing, what we want to do is create a lot of inquiry so we can select who we want to work for rather than being desperate and having to work for those, or give quotes out to just 2 or 3 people a month. So we want to make sure that when we're recruiting, we've got a good amount of selection and that we can ensure that we make as best, give us the best chance. Now, something that, and you've heard me mention Gary Vaynerchuk on the show before, something he talks about is hire quickly, fire quickly. Don't attach your ego to the fact that you're a great recruiter or a great hirer of staff or employees. People can have shit go sideways in their life. They started out really well. They were good for 6 months and they fell off the perch. It's just life. Deal with it. If they turn toxic and they're affecting the culture and the business, you got to let them go. End of story. Accountability, not sure how. You have to be accountable. If you're out there and it's laissez-faire and you feel like you can do whatever you want, at the end of the day, if you've got no one to be accountable to, I'll tell you who you're accountable to. You're accountable to your creditors, you're accountable to the bank more often than not, and you're accountable to clients. So you might as well get comfortable with accountability. Now, if you were able to add a mentor to that and you're able to be accountable to that person probably once a week at least, then that's going to really give you some clarity as far as your direction and your growth trajectory. So it's super important. So look, to round up, we've been at this a little while now, but to round up, I think ultimately what you've just done, if you were to get marketing, sales, estimating and quoting, administration, construction, and then culture, recruitment, and accountability in place, what you're going to find is that you're going to constantly want to revisit and always improve. Always the research and development and making things better is always the case. But you're going to start with a fairly basic systemization of your business, and that is going to enable you to grow the business. It's going to be able to put people in the right places with the right systems and allow them to do their job, and it allows you to step back one step away from the front line. So if you're on the tools with 2 guys, you're right on the front line. What we're talking about a systemization is being able to put the systems in place and then put people in the systems, and then you can take a step back and a step back and a step back. So ultimately what you want to be is a business owner. And really that lends itself to really the fact that you're now starting to master the art of business. And of course, then you start to, you can't do all of that systemization and not have team. So leading people is definitely another challenge that you're going to have to develop. So this is all of the stuff that you've got to develop, all the stuff that you need as a general contractor to develop a large general contracting business is essentially outside of your trade skill set. So you are on a massive learning curve to really win this. But I tell you, if you're in love with the game like I am, there is some challenges week on week that really do get me quite frustrated. But when I don't lose an ounce of sleep. I mean, it doesn't keep me from sleeping. 9 times out of 10, I'll sleep like a baby. So because I love what I do. So I'm very self-aware of what my skills are. I'm probably not even the best carpenter in the world, but I certainly do love being a CEO and helping the people that I help, both on and off. And so if you like what you hear or maybe you know somebody that could benefit from this information, be sure to share it. Certainly we'd appreciate a like. And if you've got any comments that you want to make down there, then feel free to do that. But look, you can email me directly at max@businessforbuilders.ca, and I will respond as promptly as I can. But look, we really appreciate your ear, and we really hope that this information goes a long way to help you build a business that you can be proud of. So have a great day, and we will see you on the next episode. Cheers.